We got a big battle in front of us, baby. And it's just started. So let's get funky like a monkey. For 16 years, the American dream has done it with you. Don't fail me now. No, don't fail me now.
Wrestlebros are back. Not live. Oh, that's a big fist you got there. Captain Lou, Big Blaze, like always. We kind of missed a couple of shows, I guess. We had Fastlane, right?
Which,
I mean, I didn't want to talk about Fastlane anyway.
Which was.
But it did.
With the exception of the main event, was.
We did get some news
passable.
out of Fastlane. We had Bray Wyatt, right, make an appearance. The new Bray Wyatt. I like the new Bray. I like. Look, I don't like the booking, right? I don't like how Bray Wyatt has been booked, or the Fiend has been booked. I don't like that he's a babyface. I don't like that Alexa's a babyface. I don't necessarily like a mini Randy Orton Alexa Bliss feud. I do like that there was at least some long-term storytelling here, which is very rare in WWE. So you had Bray Wyatt get burned, or the Fiend get burned, and he took 2 months. I don't. How long was he out?
I'd say about 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay. So in my mind, once we decide to burn him, in my mind, I'm like, I need a new Bray Wyatt. I need a new Fiend look. New mask or something, right? Especially now that he's doing the mask. I'm like, okay, we need opportunities to bring in new looks. I mean, I like the Fiend, and I wish there were smarter people, because it takes a really smart person to book such a character, especially with everything that's already been done that wasn't that good. You know, you can't go back in time. I don't know how you fix it, but seeing him, I was like, oh yeah, I like it. I like the burn. I like the idea. You know, yes, it's I don't know, it's a weird looking getup, but his hands were burnt. It's probably gloves or whatever, but you know, there's a lot of attention to detail. Again, though, when you book this and you go, okay, so the Fiend is now burnt, so he's burnt forever. So now he kind of has to wear a similar costume, or he can't show his arms. You know, so it's like, how do you get out of this? I don't think you think it through. Although I think Bray Wyatt is heavily involved in at least the way he looks and some of those ideas and how they get from point A to point B. Maybe he has a way to get his looks back. I don't know. Maybe there's a magician that comes in and does some reverse magic. I don't know. I was happy to see the Fiend back. I think he's supposed to be a really big star. I think people are interested in him and they're captivated by the way he looks and the music and the entrance. If we can get some good stories that make sense, that aren't too crazy, and some good matches, because his matches struggle because they started with him the whole no selling thing, but then they had the, you know, hit him with 75 of your finishers, and then they had Goldberg beat him easily. So it kind of messed everything up for him. So I don't know how you recover, but I want to see some good things from him. I want to continue to see more mask. I'd like to see Bo Wyatt with a mask. And I'm not joking. It's like you're both. I'm sure Bo Dallas is under contract, and I'm sure they don't get rid of him because they don't want to piss Bray off. Because I'm sure Bray holds a lot of weight with that company. And even the family name probably has a lot of respect. And they probably want to make sure, probably like Cody. Cody probably could have had a job for life. Cody has said that, you know, they would have probably kept me there forever and paid him well, but he never would have probably made it to where he wanted to make it, you know, as a top guy or whatever. But out of respect, they probably would have kept him employed for the rest of his life. You know, probably similar thing. But if you have Bo Dallas on the contract, why not? I think people want to see him with his brother. Maybe give him a cool look, a scarier look, and he doesn't have to do anything. Just be next to Bray. I want to see Bo Dallas.
I mean, uh, it's very difficult, right? Because and I've said this in previous videos about the Fiend and why I always, and it always bothered me because Bray Wyatt is the man behind Bray Wyatt is very intelligent guy, and he's very creative, and he's always thinking about different ways to transition his persona from the Bray Wyatt persona that we first saw in 2014 on WWE TV as the cult leader, and then basically just breadcrumbing it all the way till we got to this iteration of the Fiend. The thing that has always bothered me about the Fiend is that as a character, there's no way to book this in any way, because the way, for me, the proper way to have booked the Fiend would have been is you make him essentially the movie monster type persona that beats everybody. And what ends up happening is that he shows up, he terrorizes, he's gone, and you don't see him for a while. He was presented on WWE TV where he had storylines where he's coming out every week, and it's always, that same, the lights out, the Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street type thing. And yes, it's scary, and in a vacuum, you can look at it and say, you know what, if you were, put yourself in the 5 or 6 year old version of yourself, and you'd be scared of this persona. But when you see it every single week, you lose the effectiveness the more you do it, because what ends up happening is that, unfortunately, as you've said, if WWE is not going to commit to booking him to basically smash over everybody, people are going to have to get to him, whether it is, to use your own words, hitting him with the 75 finishers or having Bill Goldberg beat him in 3 minutes. It's like these are the kinds of things that, unfortunately, the more that you do this, you confuse, not that you're confusing the audience, but you confuse the purpose of the gimmick. That's really what this is confusing the actual purpose of the gimmick. I was actually, and the thing is, I like Alexa Bliss playing the Harley Quinn in this scenario. The thing that gets me is that part of me wishes that the Alexa Bliss character was actually Sister Abigail, and that she's pulling the strings on the Fiend, because it gives her more power in the scenario. Number two is that then it's always based on the fact that he has a weakness. The weakness is the woman, is Alexa Bliss, Sister Abigail. And the thing about it is, no one's going to get to Sister Abigail because she's got quote unquote special powers. You're never going to put Alexa Bliss in a position where, in this gimmick, in this role, she would have to compete. And especially the ridiculously stupid Alexa Bliss versus Randy Orton, and again, there's so much of it that's just stupid and asinine and backwards about this story. But the way that you would book Alexa Bliss is, she's Sister Abigail. She pulls the strings. She's pulling the strings on the Fiend, with the intent that if you were to ever want to turn the Fiend babyface for real, it's because Sister Abigail turns on him.
Yeah, and
almost like Paul Bearer and The Undertaker.
Yeah,
but she doesn't have that spot in this scenario. In this scenario, the Fiend took over Alexa Bliss and brought Alexa Bliss into the dark side. Instead of if Sister Abigail is this is this spirit that Sister Abigail utilizes the body of Alexa Bliss as Sister Abigail. The Fiend recognizes that this is Sister Abigail, and then is not subservient, but acquiesces to her. That the Fiend can terrorize and do everything, but it's not him that's pulling the strings, it's Sister Abigail that's doing it. Because at some point, if you want to turn the Fiend babyface, all you have to do is create a situation where Sister Abigail feels like, hey, you know what? This guy wants to go off on his own. Again, these are very silly scenarios because of the fact that you have to really suspend disbelief hugely to make this work. But at the same token, it always makes more sense, and it's again, with the Undertaker, when in the initial iteration of the Undertaker, when he was a heel, the thing that made him powerful was the urn, and the caretaker of the urn was Paul Bearer. There came a point when you wanted to separate them, you turn Paul Bearer heel, and he would, and of course, you had Mankind and you had all these different characters that made more sense to have the personalities go against each other. There's absolutely no personality on WWE TV that even remotely comes close to the Fiend in today's environment. No one even remotely close.
No.
So when you put anybody against the Fiend, it almost looks like, for lack of a better term, it's almost like putting Lou Thesz against, Jason Voorhees. On its face, it looks completely ridiculous. And yet somehow you're being asked as the audience member to suspend your disbelief enough to try to buy it and make, and hopefully it works. Listen, all the attention to detail to the Fiend's costume and his presentation. Yes, it's very impressive, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, because the way this story was told, I'm like, I don't care to see the Fiend versus Randy Orton. I don't want to see it. I don't, because if the Fiend was to come back, he has to come back as a baby face, true baby face. And part of it is because there's no audience there to be able to cheer, boo, applaud, piss on it, whatever. There's no live audience there. But part of me is just like, okay, I didn't feel sympathy for the Fiend really when he got burned. First of all, because it was a dummy, but that's neither here nor there. But it's a matter that the Fiend's not a real baby face. He's not. And people are trying to, to make this correlation, and I'm like, no. It's not. That correlation isn't there. When the WWF turned the Undertaker babyface in 1992 against Jake Roberts, the reason why it worked is because the fans had already organically turned the Undertaker. Because for a year and a half, the Undertaker was basically smashing over every guy in the company. And the fans started getting behind him because obviously when you see people who are smashing over everybody and look like badasses, you start to cheer it. The reason why it worked is because Jake Roberts was a legitimate heel. His character, his gimmick, his personality, his presentation, everything was heelish. It made sense. All the Undertaker did was he didn't change a single thing about his persona. Not a single thing. It's just a matter that instead of beating up the baby faces, he was now beating up a heel. That's all it was. The Fiend, knowing that the Fiend doesn't speak, knowing that Alexa Bliss is not viewed, she's viewed as his representative, but it doesn't have the same effect. The way that it would have made sense is if Randy Orton would have been able to get his hands on Alexa Bliss and put her down. You're never going to see that on WWE TV, and I'm not advocating for it. But I'm just saying that in a storyline perspective, Alexa Bliss basically got the better of Randy Orton the entire time. So if Randy Orton, 6'5", 250 pounds, is basically being outmaneuvered by a little girl who's 5 foot nothing and 100 pounds, at what point does the Fiend return and it makes any damn sense? Alexa Bliss had to be made vulnerable in order for the Fiend to come back as a baby face. And he ain't shaking hands and kissing babies, but meaning his return is necessitated because now his representative is in danger. Never happened. This whole storyline is ass backwards. And now, apparently, we're going to see the Fiend versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania. And who cares?
Yeah. Um, so something else that happened in the pre-show, which I thought was
In the pre-show.
yeah, was weird. Riddle defeated Mustafa Ali, and then you had the rest of Retribution turn on Mustafa Ali. So clearly they just wanted it to be over, and I think like you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, they just kind of wanted to go away and hope no one notices. Um, I would have made a better effort. I would have made it a bigger deal. I also, it's like weird when heels turn on heels. I know Mustafa's been berating these guys, but am I supposed to cheer for them now? Because they haven't earned that. They have not earned that. I'm sorry. So it's just heels that I don't care about, turning on a heel that I don't care about.
I mean, you remember, listen, this dates back from the very beginning of Retribution, what I said. Retribution was, I think it was a super cool concept here. But then when they put it to paper and then they tried to execute on it, it was popcorn fart after popcorn fart after popcorn fart. You cannot, this is the classic example of promotions, over promising and under delivering. Retribution, when it was first brought about, was brought about as a gimmick that was supposed to be, outside people or internal people in the WWE, right? Or outside folks who were pissed off about, not getting opportunities. Okay, cool. Retribution, when they were first introduced, was like an entire organization. It was like 100 people coming out there and terrorizing everybody.
Which was not sustainable, of course.
Correct. But what ended up happening is that we went from having 100 people that looked like they were 5'2" and 110 pounds I'm sorry, for professional wrestlers who are 5'2" and 110 pounds, but you ain't scaring nobody. You're just not. And then when people started laughing at it, and rightfully so, the next week we got, a bunch of people that look like Omos, 7 feet tall and 350 pounds. And that's ridiculous too. Because when you put that from the week before, when you had a bunch of little guys, and then the next week you got a bunch of giants, you're like, okay, where's the in between? Then when we got the big reveal, wah, wah, just awful. You had Dominic Dijakovic, Dio Madden, Shane Thorne, Mia Yim, and Mercedes Martinez, who Mercedes Martinez mercifully got out of that gimmick and was sent back to NXT, mercifully.
She was not having it. I'm shocked they weren't pissed about that. Maybe they were, who knows? She was like, I'm not doing this. And they were like,
and here's the reality.
Right.
She was right. She's
We
ultimately
knew that.
right
Everyone
about
knew
that.
it. Everyone knew it.
Listen. Mercedes Martinez at this particular point in her career, again, people who know about professional wrestling know about Mercedes Martinez. And with all due respect, this gimmick of Retribution was never befitting to her. Because Retribution this gimmick would work if you had people who are either brand new to the WWE or people who have been seen so little of that you can kind of freshen up different gimmicks.
Or if they just didn't, once they were presented, you
Make
didn't
them
tell
badasses.
me, you didn't put mask on them and then expect me to go, oh, that's not Dijakovic.
That's the point. That's the point that I'm getting at.
Acknowledge.
The point that I'm getting at is that these were all people, with the exception of Dio Madden, these were all people who were featured on NXT not more than 2 or 3 weeks prior to them showing up on Raw. And I get it. NXT has exactly 1/3 of Raw's audience. Yeah, I get it. But at the end of the day, the WWE fans, the core WWE audience knew exactly who these guys were. It was a stupid gimmick, and WWE made a mistake by not reading the room and understanding that when the reveal was done and people were laughing at it because they knew it was like, you didn't even do a good enough job of hiding these people's identities. With the exception of Shane Thorne with the Jason mask, he's the only one that befit the gimmick a little well. Everybody else, you knew exactly who they were from the moment you saw them. And that's bad. Because the thing that you could have done is you could have had them cut promos as themselves. Mia Yim is Mia Yim, Mercedes is Mercedes, Dijak without the mask. And then they're cutting the promo, and then as it goes, it fades into the mask because the mask is just basically them embracing a new version of themselves. But at no moment should you not acknowledge who they are, because everybody knows who they are. I get it that you're trying to create new gimmicks and new characters, but unfortunately, these people, if they were gone for 6 months and we didn't see them for the previous 6 months, 8 months, a year, fine. But these people were on TV 2 weeks prior. Makes no sense. And Mustafa Ali, God bless him. Again, he's a very, very good wrestler, incredibly articulate. And being the leader of Retribution was actually very good for him because it gave him a lot of mic time. It allowed him to, if nothing else, get himself over as a talker and get himself over, potentially now that once this is done, he can now move on to be a bigger single star. Unfortunately, he didn't win the United States title. And again, all due respect to Matt Riddle, Matt Riddle's not hot enough to be able to beat Mustafa Ali under this circumstance. It would have.
I agree with you last time. I disagreed with you last. I'm gonna disagree again. Mustafa Ali is much colder than Riddle.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the way that Riddle's been booked, the way that Riddle has been booked as of late,
both bad. They're both bad right
now. That's the reason why I'm saying that he's not hot enough. There's a difference when you look at somebody and you say, okay, you get it when you might like somebody else, but you understand why, wrestler A beats wrestler B. You can get it, you understand it. But in this particular case, I'm like, you could put the belt on either guy and it's not gonna make the guy who wins, and it's not gonna kill the guy that loses. And that's really, with Retribution, if you wanted to keep it moving, it would have made more sense to keep put the belt on Mustafa Ali. They chose not to. If Retribution is gonna go away, just let it die. I'm okay with it.
No, I'm totally.
Because my fear is that WWE is going to try to have the foursome, the Retribution foursome minus Ali, try to keep them on as a unit. WWE, please listen. This does not work.
No.
Let it die. Repackage all four of these talents, and hopefully you get one of two responses. Either the fans forgive or forget. That's the only thing you can ask for. It's either the fans will forgive the nonsense they've been fed for the last 8 months and give these four performers, another chance to be able to go out there on their own and, in their different gimmicks, and they can forgive it, or they can forget about Retribution. And forgetting means is that now all four of these people are going to have to be off TV for a while. So take your pick, but continuing this, no, it's got to end. Like yesterday.
All right. You didn't get to see SmackDown, right?
Tonight, no, I did not.
Is Edge? Would you consider Edge? I haven't seen SmackDown today. I'm assuming I would know if I got to see SmackDown whether or not Edge was heel. I don't think, based on what I saw, what I've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, that he is a heel. I know he hit Daniel Bryan with a chair, but for me, that's fine, right? Because he got hit with Edge got hit too. He was just retaliating. Yeah, that's a normal human reaction. Like, if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. Like, I'm sorry, I'm pissed off. Like, you're in my.
I think that the situation with Edge is it's not that he's heel, because he's certainly not. I don't think he is.
Well, what I'm seeing on SmackDown, pictures wise, he looks very angry. He looks very. It looks like he's telling what's his name? What's this guy? Pierce.
Oh well, yeah, well of course,
Well,
because
he's
well of course he's going to be pissed at Adam Pierce because I'm sure. Listen, I didn't watch SmackDown, but I'm sure they're coming off of the Fastlane show. What's gonna probably likely happen is that Adam Pierce, considering that Daniel Bryan got screwed, and Edge, and the thing is that the way that the story was told is that you can point the blame at Edge for Daniel Bryan, losing to Roman Reigns. So what ends up happening is that now Adam Pierce is going to say, well, since you, Edge, had played a part in the result of the match, the way that it ended up, well, now your one-on-one match with Roman Reigns is not going to happen. Now Daniel Bryan's going to get inserted, and it's going to be a triple threat match at WrestleMania. And if I'm Edge, would I be upset about that? Hell yeah. Because now you went from having a 50-50 shot to having a 33% shot of winning the title. The more players you put in the game. So that's where the anger lies, and knowing that the promos that Edge and Daniel Bryan have cut on one another, although they're both being baby faces, but they're both very clear about their purpose. Both guys are, at least the way that they're being presented as being in similar points in their careers where they're like, we don't have many more of these matches. We got more of these matches behind us than we do in front of us. And they're basically like, they're kind of in each other's way because they both want to be the champion, and they both want to main event WrestleMania, and they both want to beat Roman Reigns. So it's very good storytelling. So where the two baby faces cancel each other out, so there is no quote unquote white meat baby face in this, which is very nuanced and very well done. So that's the reason why I'm saying that. No, do I think Edge is a heel? Absolutely not. It's just a matter that his intention is very clear, and Daniel Bryan is in the way. And Daniel Bryan's intention is very clear, and he sees Edge being in the way.
Yeah, I don't think Edge is a heel, and I hope WWE doesn't go, oh well, let's go heel.
Oh God, no.
For me, this story, I mean, I know Reigns. A lot of people probably want to see Reigns win or whatever. I don't want to see Reigns win. Not anything against Reigns. Reigns is fine. Reigns is at the top of his game. We're going to see Reigns at the top of his game for the next 10 years, maybe.
At least the next 5, probably.
Well, people are aging.
He's at right now.
People are aging much slower. So as long as he doesn't have any injuries.
Well, no, I'm not talking about injury-wise. I'm just talking about this iteration of his persona. Could he keep this for 10 years? No.
I doubt we'll get 5 years of this exact iteration. I think he'll be babyface in 3. If we're lucky, I hope it stretches to 5 and we get an amazing heel run, and then he can go babyface and then never go heel again.
Because the fans won't accept him as a heel anymore.
Yeah, I don't. I think he, as a heel right now, establishes his promo work, which has been phenomenal, and his matches. He's had some very nice, memorable matches. He had them before too, but they feel a little bit more important now. And hopefully, this match at WrestleMania will be another one in his legacy. And I think he will reach a point where the fans will, always love him. And some guys just reach that point where the fans will never turn on them again.
Sure.
But I do want to see him lose, only because if I'm writing this movie or this story, the best story right now, this year, is Edge winning that title for me. He came back after all those years, and I'm against, giving the old timers, all the love and not pushing young talent. However, Edge, although he's an older guy, it feels fresh. It feels like young talent because he hasn't been here. He is essentially a new star. He hasn't been here in 8 years, right?
9.
9 years. So that's a long, long time. There's a large section of that audience that doesn't even, know what he's capable of, or even got to see him in his prime. And he can still do everything that he used to do. Maybe even better.
Yeah,
Because he had
I
9 years to sit down and think about it. So he's probably has 8 billion ideas he wants to execute. But I want to see Edge. Edge is probably gonna pin Daniel Bryan. Edge is probably gonna win the title. Roman will get it back whenever, but he'll get it back plenty of times. Roman will probably be a 10-time champ when it's all said and done. He'll be the top heel in the company for the next 5 years or 3 to 5. He'll turn babyface, be the top babyface in the company. Hopefully Drew keeps up and he's also a top babyface in the company. And then they can battle for that spot. And hopefully there's other people chasing because you need more than one. For me, I know they've gone the route of having one star at a time, but I feel like there has been times like having an Undertaker, a Shawn Michaels, a Mick Foley, guys that
cast on top. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's okay to have people that are mega stars, more than one super mega star. I'm okay with that, especially if you have two shows and you keep them separate, like you have. There's plenty of room now. There's fans that go crazy for 10, 15 people, so there's plenty of room.
Of course,
we're gonna be fine. So because we're gonna be fine, I think we go with Edge for now. Edge will eventually have some epic matches with some other people. I'm sure that's what he's dying to do. Roman will get his title back. Hopefully, we build some more baby faces to go up against him. We need some. I'm still for more fresh faces, please.
well,
more fresh faces in WWE right now.
I will say this, right? To your point about having more people at the top in the main event, you're absolutely right. There should be. The thing that's frustrating with WWE is that they have the best talent in the world. The best talent in the world are all in that roof. Yes, every company has their guys. You can look at any wrestling company and you can always point out, a handful of guys here and there that are top tier stars. But when you look at WWE up and down their roster, and I mean it's not universal and it's not absolute, but they got the best roster. It's just that they're not booked. They're just not booked that way. They're just not booked that way.
Yeah, if you take away booking, and it was one giant company, and all the wrestling company, it was one company in the world, right? This giant company, and it was every wrestler, and they were all treated equally and all had equal opportunity to succeed based on their in-ring work and mic skills and whatever. WWE has more great people than anybody else.
Of course.
A lot. However, based on booking, they don't have a lot of great people.
And
but you're right. They have a lot of people who are supposed to be absolutely great.
And here's where when you take a look at what WWE, and I've said this before, WWE's booking right now is not good. It's the shits. However, they have the best talent in the world that all you need to do is be able to right the ship and put it in a direction that can go in one plausible direction, not one or two acts or a couple of wrestlers or segments. I'm talking the entire company, the universal roster of the WWE, regardless of where they land. You move them all in one general direction and get it right. And I believe that in a 6-month period, WWE does it that way, they're back in major league business. And I'm not talking about business in terms of their company business. I'm talking about interest from the audience wanting to watch WWE's programming. They have the best talent in the world. It's just they're booked poorly. You know, and the thing is, when you go back to, you know, circling back to Roman Reigns, Edge, and Daniel Bryan, you're right. If Edge goes over, he's going to beat Daniel Bryan because obviously WWE wants to protect Roman Reigns, not have him take an L.
Not yet.
I'm listen. The reason why I didn't want to see a triple threat match is because of the fact that I already knew from a mile out that the only reason that this would be booked as a triple threat match is so that Roman Reigns can lose the title without getting beat. It's the whole purpose around it.
At least the story has been interesting.
The way that it's been executed has been brilliant. Thus far, the way it's been executed, brilliant.
It's arguably the best booked story they have, but this is what happens when you listen to your wrestlers. These are the only 3 wrestlers that Vince listens to. These are the top 3 guys. These guys help. Daniel Bryan and Edge literally help with creative right now.
Listen, I'm not going to say whether that's true or not because I don't know. However, do I believe, again, I believe that every professional wrestler, if you really, really believe in what you're doing, and you are, you know, you're going to dig your heels in and say, I'm going to want to push for something better for myself, not because I'm being selfish about it, but because I know it's good, then you got to be able to articulate that in such a way, and every wrestler should be encouraged to do just that. Now, there are some people who are in professional wrestling who are really fantastic athletes and maybe don't get the big picture of what it looks like. They get the athletic part, like the bell to bell inside the ring, they get it. But like the big picture of how you want to be really presented, or maybe some personas want to do stuff that in the larger context was like, no, we got to tone it down a little bit. Not that it's not good. It's just a matter that when we look at the overall picture of what we're trying to do, if we allow you to go past said point, it's not that it's going to make your segments bad. It just might take away from something more prominent that we're trying to present. You understand? It's not that we can't revisit it or allow you to do it at a certain point. It's just a matter that at this particular moment may not be the best idea because, you know, it might detract focus from something else that is more important in, you know, for the overall. Now, this thing here with Daniel Bryan, Edge, Roman Reigns, do I believe that all 3 guys have Vince McMahon's ear? Yeah, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. Now, do I think that those are the only guys that Vince listens to? No. No, I don't. Whether or not their ideas and the way they fleshed them out are so good that they're like green lights on everything, maybe.
Oh, I'm sure, but I'm sure there's still not green lights on everything.
I'm just saying that it's a matter of they got really great ideas and then you flesh them out and then you get what you get. And this iteration of Roman Reigns' run, with the exception of the Royal Rumble match, excuse me, against Kevin Owens, which I thought was, again, great effort by both guys, but the match made no sense. That was everything that Roman Reigns has done has just been excellent. Excellent has been his baseline. The match he had with Daniel Bryan at Fastlane was brilliant. It was tour de force. Brilliant. It was the best thing I've seen on a WWE show in a long, long time. And considering some of the stuff that was in that Fastlane show, and considering what preceded it, which was the Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, Alexa Bliss thing, which was so bad, and then you got that match, which was so good, you're like, okay, you can give me both extremes, You can give me something that just makes me want to throw my shoe at the TV, and then you have something that's like, more of this, please. Like, I'm not saying that everything in wrestling needs to be that, but if it has the same care, the same kind of care, the same kind of just the same kind of care, and every segment got that, wrestling would be great. We'd want to watch it every week. But unfortunately, that just doesn't happen. But ultimately, that triple threat match at WrestleMania is going to be designed to have Roman Reigns lose the title without having to take an L. And to me, it's just like, as brilliant as the storytelling has been, part of me is it's like grinding my teeth knowing that this is what's going to end up happening at the end.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are some times where the story is obvious, but if it's the right thing to do, you can still send the fans home happy. So, yes, it's probably obvious. Roman could still win this match.
And I hope he does, quite frankly.
I mean, I rather, but Roman can still win. I mean, anything can happen, really. They can definitely throw a swerve and have Daniel Bryan win. And then, just have all three of them feuding with each other for the next 6 months. That's very possible. They could easily be throwing Daniel Bryan in because in their eyes now, he's this amazing talent that makes everything and turns everything into gold now. Everything he touches is just magical, especially as of late. He's just tip top of his game.
Oh, yes.
So maybe
that's for sure.
I think he's there to take the pin, but I'm sure they see it as an opportunity for him to go and make it maybe a little bit better. Who knows? But I think the fans will still go home happy, either because the match is going to be really good because of the people involved, or because you're going to get a tearjerker with Edge winning the title. But if Roman wins the title, it'll still be good because the match I expect the execution to be brilliant. That's I have a high expectation. I don't care that it's a three-way. These guys are way too experienced. The expectation is through the roof with fans. So, I mean, I want to see what they do.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just a quick point because I know that earlier when you were talking about Roman Reigns and how, his maturation process, Roman Reigns has had a lot of big matches in the past, right? The difference is that in those occasions, Roman Reigns was working with the guy drawing money. Now Roman Reigns is the guy that's making the money. There's the difference. He's now the draw in those matches.
Yeah. Also, there was a disconnect with the fans where even if the match was good, the fans were fighting with themselves because they're like, "I'm supposed to cheer for Roman. I don't want him to win this match." There was a lot of that which took away from the matches. Where now, I think he's done really good heel work that the fans will want to see him lose. They'll want one of the baby faces to win. Now they have to keep that. They have to make the fans want it, right? They got to tell the right story in the ring. And
and they will. The
fans are going to play. Trust me, the fans that are going to be there, I expect them to play right into everything that the wrestlers do because they miss it so much. They have not been able to go to these damn shows. They're going to eat it up. I expect them to eat it up, and it's going to be fun to watch. I expect it to be fun to watch.
Listen, it's going to be a virgin territory, for lack of a better term. The one thing that when you take a look at WrestleMania, it's going to be a little weird in terms of this particular match because the theory would be is that you go balls to the wall with something like this. I think that to a certain degree, knowing that you're going to have fans who haven't seen live wrestling in over a year, you might be able to get the same or more reaction not having to do as much. Because again, you're absolutely right. There's going to be an audience that hasn't seen live wrestling in over a year. They're clamoring for it. And the fans that go to see WrestleMania are usually the most rabid fans. So you combine that with the reality that this is the first, real big, the real big live wrestling show that you've got a chance to see in over a year. It's a formula to where, Roman Reigns, those guys can just sit there in a headlock for a minute and everybody's popping for a headlock or a body slam. I'm exaggerating the point, but what I'm getting at is that they may be able to, they may get the same reactions that they would get having to go balls to the wall, not having to do as much.
Really quick, because this pissed me off, and in any other promotion, I would say, well, it's not that big a deal, but to me, this was a big deal.
Okay.
On NXT, Bronson Reed beat LA Knight in his first match.
Well, it was technically LA Knight's second match, but
second match. What was his first match?
He wrestled.
Like an enhancement talent.
He wrestled an enhancement guy. Yeah.
Okay, so his first
quote unquote feature match.
You know, I don't agree with this at all. This is why I did not want him in NXT. I think the people that get featured in NXT are the indie darlings, the super good, technical wrestlers. Eli Drake, I think, is a good wrestler. I've seen him do some great stuff. He hasn't really been given opportunities to go have these great matches. When he was Impact champion, he had a few matches that.
Yeah, but he was a great worker in a bad company at the time. Like he just.
Well,
the Impact roster was very thin at that time.
Well, there were still some people there. I mean, I'm not gonna go back and look, but he still got to work with some good people. But this was, the first time where he grew quickly, right? It took him like a year. His mic skills are so good, he got over pretty quick.
Absolutely. And he's fantastic on the mic.
Yeah, so he got over pretty quick, but he didn't have a lot of great matches. Even opportunities to have great matches, right? Because he wasn't in the main event. But the few main events he had, I was impressed with him. So I do think he's definitely a good enough worker.
Oh, absolutely. He definitely is.
I mean, he's not Adam Cole and he's not Johnny Gargano, whatever. And those are the type of guys that get pushed in NXT. This is why I thought Eli Drake is a main roster guy. Even if you bring him up slowly, you let him cut promos, you let him have, the way you like to bring new guys, let him beat up some losers, and for a month, for two.
Call them enhancement talents, enhancement guys. Come on, be nice.
But this is not it. I'm sorry. In WWE, perception it's a real thing. It's not like I feel like in AEW, if you're a young guy, you can lose because the fans are like, okay, he's a young guy. He'll get it in 2 years. That's when he's gonna start getting the push or whatever. Unless it's like a MJF, who's presented as a big player. Eli Drake, his promos were like MJF. I'm the hottest shit here. I'm the best guy here. You cannot lose in that situation for me. Well, at least not now, and definitely not to Bronson Reed, who, in my opinion, is not a top 10 guy in NXT.
He's not.
He's good, and I respect his work, but I'm not that big a fan, and he has not been featured or treated like a top 10 guy in NXT. He's not the one that should be beating Eli Drake.
Well, when this match was booked, I thought two things. One, this should not be on NXT television, considering that they're having a 2-night, NXT takeover special, WrestleMania week. You figure that you would save that match for one of those nights. That's the first thing I thought. Number two, when I watched the match, I just thought to myself, this match, and it's not meant to throw shade at Bronson Reed. So again, it's not meant for that. But if LA Knight, Eli Drake, whatever, however you want to call him, he shows up and he gets a lot of fanfare. He shows up and he looks like a star. And he walks in, he gets one match against an enhancement talent, and he wins. Then they do the whole thing with Bronson Reed, and Bronson Reed beats him, and he beats him flat. He beats him with his finish. I saw that match and I thought to myself, I mean, I was very similar. I was upset too when I saw that. And I just thought to myself, if you're not, again, we've already been watching Bronson Reed for the last year, year and a half. We've been watching Bronson Reed on NXT TV. There were times when he was elevated to upper mid card, almost near the top of the card. You know, if you eliminate the Undisputed Era, you know, at the time, you could feasibly see somebody like Bronson Reed working his way there. Then he got cold again, and he hasn't warmed up, he hasn't heated up since then. To have him beat LA Knight flat with his finish, what it tells me is, I'm like, okay, it's either we're looking to do big things with Bronson Reed at the expense of a guy who, with all due respect, can easily be promoted, pushed, and elevated faster than Bronson Reed can. No shade meant to him. It's just that LA Knight is a more marketable personality. He looks better. He talks better. I'm not going to say that he works better. It's different. But he's just way more marketable. He just is. There's no disrespect meant to Bronson Reed. It's just the truth. And, you know, to have that result, you know, again, it's just like, no. You could have had Bronson Reed beat LA Knight. LA Knight makes a mistake. And then Bronson Reed hits him with a different move, not the big freaking splash. It's just, you just killed the guy flatter than floor. You just beat him. Like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there is the point.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
The only time this works is when you're going to introduce a new element to a character when they lose a match they weren't supposed to lose, and then they just snap. You can't do that 1 month into a guy's debut.
or that Bronson Reed is a guy who is heating up, and he's being presented as somebody, and it just that LA Knight picked the fight with the wrong guy. But to the audience, you see that Bronson Reed is on the rise, and LA Knight shows up, and he's trying to cut in front, and then he gets beat, understandably so. Bronson Reed keeps rising up, and then when he's just about to get to the pinnacle, you know, the NXT title, the North American title, that's where LA Knight cuts him at the knees, and then you start telling the story. But first match to flatten him out like that, no.
Especially since his character is like, he's so confident, he's so sure of himself, and his promo is so strong, and his entire presentation is about how he is the hottest shit in all of NXT, and it's not close.
But you gotta back it up.
Yes, even as a heel, this early in the game, late in the game, somebody has to make him eat his words. Absolutely.
But not this soon.
It has to be the right guy, and it has to be at the right time. And I don't think this was the right time, and I don't think that was the right guy.
No.
So that's sad. It's unfortunate. He has a bad name, and now he has a really big loss. And, you know, whatever. Let's see what happens next. Hopefully he goes on a they realize that was a little bit silly, and you can always recover, but it's hard in WWE. In WWE's world, even though it's NXT, fans, they forget about you quick, man. They fall in love with other people.
My disposition is that regardless of the promotion, right? I don't care what promotion this is. We're talking about WWE right now, but at the end of the day, the reason why I say that booking is so important, booking is very important, and consistency is very important. There are different companies that try to book things differently, and they try to start something, then they pause it, and then they want to do callbacks to things that were never truly developed. It's only the most learned of fans that'll be able to catch those things. And I get it. Those are things that are good, but when you do it for everything, it's bad. In WWE, in this particular instance with LA Knight, again, Bronson Reed is not a guy who is looked at as a top 10 talent in NXT. It's not perceived as such. And LA Knight, again, when you're a heels talk shit, heels lie, heels embellish. But the reason why they can do it and is credible is because of the fact that they win. In the beginning, they win more than they lose. Actually, they don't lose at all. They win all the time. No matter if they're beating guys that are inferior to them talent-wise in perception, and then when they finally run into the first like real big challenge, they cheat. But ultimately, as you said, the heels have to eat their words at some point. You just can't do it this soon, because now when LA Knight starts cutting promos, calling himself the hottest free agent or whatever he wants to call himself, there's no credibility, none. And that's the problem. And I'm hoping that WWE saw this and realizes we made a mistake here, and they correct course, because he's LA Knight, Eli Drake. There's a hell of a lot of potential in him, a lot, and not just potential. We're talking like if you're talking about putting the NXT Championship on somebody in the next 6 to 12 months, that's your guy. Don't screw it up.
We need to talk about this love triangle. Nah, not a love triangle. Raw Women's Championship triangle. Charlotte was supposed to face Asuka. At least that's the direction that it seemed to be going in, which I wasn't happy about.
It was supposed to be Lacey Evans to start out with.
It probably would have been Lacey Evans against Charlotte for sure. Whether or not the title would have been brought into play, I don't know. But yes, they were definitely going to go with Lacey. That's not their fault. She got pregnant. There's nothing they can do about that. Now Charlotte catches COVID. But this is why it's important to not forget about Asuka like they did. And they booked her like she wasn't important. She wasn't even on the show, it felt like, because everything she was doing was so unimportant that now there's no opponents. So you're forced to use Rhea Ripley in a story that doesn't make sense. She comes out of nowhere. She goes, I'm going to challenge you. I don't even know if Rhea's a baby or a heel yet. I guess we'll find out soon enough. I imagine she's a baby face. So we're going to have baby face against baby face, which is fine.
The fans are going to cheer for her. It's a matter of what she does in context once she gets in the ring.
So she's either going to win or lose her first match. So she's either going to win the title on her first attempt, which is not crazy, right? Because Paige did it.
She should.
I mean, she probably should, but that's not the story I want to see. I want her to beat Charlotte. I want her to beat Charlotte for the title. I mean, if it's me, if Charlotte is available, I leave it. I wait till the last second, whatever, the last couple of days before I make my decision.
If she's available, yeah.
If Charlotte is available, I'm not throwing her in the match because that's bait and switch. I'm not doing that. And we already have the triple threat. They literally just did the same story where they added a third person to the men's SmackDown. So because that match is there, if that match wasn't there, then okay, let's try to sneak Charlotte back in the match. But I almost feel like if Charlotte can't go and she cannot even be in the building, then okay, Rhea has to win. Because I don't think she should lose the first match. Unless Charlotte is available and Charlotte is the one that messes it up for her. Which makes Charlotte the heel. And it gives Rhea the opportunity to go after Charlotte. And we get that story. Which to me, Rhea beating Charlotte, even if it's not for a title, the day that Rhea beats Charlotte does more for her than her winning a Raw Women's Championship that has been treated like garbage for the last 6 months.
Well,
that's just my opinion and my taste and the things that I want to see. But if she wins, it's fine, whatever. She can still, whatever. Charlotte could challenge her after the match or something like that, and you can build to Charlotte with Rhea, and Rhea could still beat Charlotte, and it's fine. It's not that big a deal. It's, whatever. But for my taste, I really want Rhea to beat Charlotte.
Well, here's where, listen, I don't disagree with you. I remember the very first episode that we did I went off on a 20-minute rant about how WWE screwed up the simplest of matches, and Charlotte and Rhea had the best match at WrestleMania last year, except for the finish, where Charlotte made Rhea Ripley tap out, and I was like, I was just up in arms about it. The reality is that I don't like. First of all, Asuka's so cold right now that we'd have to check for a pulse. That's not her fault. She's just been booked horribly.
Not her fault at all.
Rhea Ripley appeared in the Royal Rumble, and it was very evident that she was done with NXT, but yet WWE keeps her on ice for the better part of 2 months, and then they basically pull the card out 2 or 3 weeks ahead of WrestleMania. And they kept saying, oh, Rhea Ripley's coming to Raw, Rhea Ripley's coming to Raw. Then she shows up, she wrestles no one. She just shows up and challenges the champion. Most cases, I'm like, that's an absolute no-no. Because again, NXT gets exactly 1/3 of Raw's audience. Now, although when Rhea Ripley walks through the door in full gimmick, she looks like a star. And even if you've never seen her before, when you see her, you're like, she looks like somebody. But the fact that she never wrestled anybody on Raw, and she just challenges the champion, to the naked eye, to the uneducated viewer, they would be like, why is this happening? Right? Especially the viewers that have never seen Rhea Ripley. They'd be like, who is this woman and why is she challenging Asuka? Asuka's been on WWE TV in the main roster for the last 4 or 5 years. So we're already very well educated to her. Now, if the match was supposed to be Asuka versus Charlotte Flair, that match was not a match that anybody was excited to see to begin with.
Nope.
Under the circumstances, I understand why WWE is doing this, although I don't like it. And they kind of put themselves in this position, but when you really look at it realistically and objectively, although they have a lot of very, very wonderful female talents in their locker room, 2 of them are already gone. 2 of them are already off the board. Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks, they're off the board because they're wrestling each other. Bayley, being that she's on SmackDown, you could have done the break glass and emergency, move her to Raw, even if it's temporarily, to challenge Asuka, to present that challenge, so that you don't have to break the glass of Rhea Ripley and put her in this scenario. The way that this is going to probably work is that Rhea Ripley is going to beat Asuka at WrestleMania, and she should, because Asuka, unfortunately, the last few months of Asuka in WWE, although she's been the women's champion, is really not being good. It's just not. And I think what ends up happening is that WWE is kind of, again, this is where, I talk about the essence of a persona. It's always about maintaining the aura, maintaining the presence. There's certain things about certain gimmicks that you shouldn't mess with, because you end up taking away a very integral part of what makes the gimmick work. With Asuka, what made the gimmick work for so many years when she was in NXT, and then her initial run when she got to the main roster, is that everybody was afraid of her because of how much of a potent striker and a great wrestler and a great submission and all this other stuff that she is. Obviously now with Shayna Baszler and the Nia Jaxes of the world, size-wise, it doesn't make sense to present her as such. But when you had Asuka lose as much as she did, and then becoming more of a comedy character a little bit, and trying to be more light and funny, you kind of killed part of what made her a top tier star. Although you can heat her up, you can make her more seriously and put the title on her, you can only do that but so many times, and try to find that in between balance. No, Asuka's Asuka. Comedy shit, be damned. Lighthearted stuff, be damned. No, none of it. when you're going to put her in this situation, the best situation for me would be is Rhea Ripley goes over, she wins the title. If Charlotte Flair, Charlotte's got COVID, listen, speedy recovery to you. You know what I'm saying? That's serious business, and we don't want to see anybody being sick, especially somebody who's so important to the WWE's overall product as much as Charlotte is. Should Charlotte be a part of WrestleMania? The answer is no. At this point, the answer is no. And that's okay. And I hate saying that because somebody like Charlotte Flair, how people like Charlotte and Bayley don't have matches at WrestleMania lined up at this point, it's criminal.
Well, Charlotte did have a match. She was gonna have.
What I'm saying is that, even if it would have been her against Asuka, it's not. No one was going to be doing backflips for it. That's the point that I'm getting at. The reality is that Rhea Ripley should win this match and she should beat Asuka. And she needs to be heel. The way that this is going to work is that Rhea Ripley is going to be heel. Charlotte Flair will try to come and congratulate her because, again, Charlotte Flair is a babyface. You can't be flipping her back and forth. She has to stay babyface, at least for the time being. She goes to Rhea Ripley and tries to congratulate her. Rhea Ripley basically says, I remember what happened a year ago. Difference is I'm not a babyface, now I'm a heel. She beats Charlotte's ass. The fans are going to love it because the fans who are there live are going to, especially WrestleMania weekend, those are going to be the fans that are going to be like, oh, well, this is what we've always wanted to see, blah, 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 Charlotte Flair getting their tail kicked. So they'll cheer for it. But then Rhea Ripley is a heel, a bully, because she's bigger and stronger than 3/4 of the women's roster. With very few exceptions, she could basically woman handle any woman on that roster. And she should be presented as such. She looks like a badass. And just keep doing that and keep doing it and keep doing it. Because you can't flip Charlotte heel now. You just can't. There needs to be a real reason. And that reason hasn't been presented. And if you want to make Rhea Ripley a babyface and then have Charlotte screw her over, it's like, okay, well, you'd have to revisit the story, and that's not a difficult thing to do. But then you're talking about Charlotte Flair that came back in December after being gone for 6 months. She came back in December, was babyface, and now we're gonna flip her heel in March or April. Nah, dude, can't do that. Again, it's not ideal. The situation sucks because it's, Asuka's in a bad spot and it's not her fault. Charlotte Flair's in a bad spot. It's not her fault. Rhea Ripley is in a bad spot and it's not her fault. It just is what it is. So the best thing to do here is to, try to make chicken salad out of chicken poop. And, yeah, I mean, I'm not really in love with what I'm seeing. I'm really, really not. But these women are fantastic talents. Asuka's fantastic. Rhea Ripley's fantastic. The hope is that they put on a great match at WrestleMania and that the story that comes out of it makes sense moving forward. Not for Monday, Tuesday. I'm talking about 3 months, 6 months, a year down the line to where where your end point is coming. Because the story that we wanted to see, Rhea Ripley as the babyface beating Charlotte Flair and taking the title off of her and getting her win back at WrestleMania, is not happening this year. Rhea Ripley's in the title match, but not against Charlotte. So, we're not going to get that. So now it's a matter of, what do we do now? And I think they're gonna have that match. They're just gonna reverse the roles.
All right, let's transition over to the women of AEW. Recently, we had Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa, and they had their blow off match on Dynamite. After
was it a blow off match?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I'm sure they'll revisit their rivalry. They're probably going to be rivals. They like each other as rivals. They both had interviews recently, and I think Thunder Rosa literally called Britt like her Joker, to her Batman. Like she just loves the dynamic of and Britt likes it too. She was on where did I see Britt? Oh my god, all these podcasts, they're all in my head together. I don't know who was on what. Thunder Rosa
Who's on first? What's on second?
Thunder Rosa did the AEW podcast, the unrestricted, but I don't know where I saw Britt. Ugh. Okay, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that this match for me was awesome. This was a beautiful piece of art. I watched it and I was, I was into it 1,000%. I was online. I was like, I gotta see highlights. I gotta see reactions. I gotta see what happened after the match. I gotta see what happened backstage. I'm looking. I was looking. I gotta see what the wrestlers are saying. You know, everyone was going crazy for this, and it's not just that it's whatever, a hardcore match or girls are doing things that you don't get to see that often. No, it's like you could see the passion through the screen, right? Like how much they wanted to have a great performance and a great match. They did not hold back. There were moments in that match that I will never forget. Britt going through the tags and her turning over and almost shaking, like literally like shaking. I'm like, oh my God. I got chills when I saw her do that. It was so awesome. Like it just felt it felt real, right? I got lost in it. Both girls getting color. I know this is like there's almost like a stigma. Oh, women shouldn't get color. After that match, Britt did not look ugly to me. She was still a beautiful woman. She just happened to be covered in blood. And it got her another best-selling T-shirt. Every time she gets covered in blood, she sells more T-shirts. So good for her. The important thing is that the point of this match was to put a spotlight on the women, that the women don't get a lot of chances to shine at AEW, which I'm okay with, because if you're not ready, do not put them on TV if they're not ready. But little by little, they're getting ready. They're getting better. Britt, who is like the most improved player, this girl keeps getting better and better and better, and it's happening fast. Thanks to her injury, she was able to get better with promos and character development and develop that nice heel character, which made her a more confident performer overall, which led to this probably the best match she's ever had. I'm pretty sure this is the best match she ever had that I've seen. And I don't think it's close. Definitely her best performance, you know. And if the point of this match was to get Britt Baker over, I think they knocked it out of the park. I even though she lost, right? Thunder Rosa went over, Britt Baker got over. It served its purpose. It was the best thing on the show for me. It went on last. That's a lot of pressure for the girls. First main event for the girls. First lights out match in AEW on Dynamite. They've had them on pay-per-view or on their specials. This was a high pressure situation. The girls were given the ball, and to me, they scored a touchdown. I liked it. Now I feel very confident in Thunder Rosa. I feel very confident in Britt Baker, and now we just have to keep making new stars and adding them to the mix, little by little. Don't rush it. Don't force it. Jade Cargill's one that's been looking. She looks good. Just let her keep beating on women. Then keep bringing people up. The ones that can execute on television when the lights are on, keep bringing them on television, and then we'll get more and more women, and everything will be just fine. Slowly but surely.
Okay. Well, I mean, I enjoyed the match too. I enjoyed it. I hated the thumbtacks. Thought that was absolutely stupid.
I'm sure you always hate the thumbtacks.
I do. If I think it's the shits when the guys do it, there's no way I'm going to applaud it when the girls do it. There's no way. The match, it's weird because when I saw the match, I don't think that this particular match needed to happen the way that it did. Meaning the lights out, you know, no disqualification, anything goes, false count anywhere. Like after a while, and I say this with all due respect, because it's not meant to throw any shade at Thunder Rosa, you know, Britt Baker or Rebel in any way, shape, or form, because they did a fantastic job. They really did. All three, you know, because you got to include Rebel too, because she was part of the act. But Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa busted their asses and they worked incredibly hard. The thing is that when you take a look at their rivalry, the way that it's been presented on AEW television, they haven't really wrestled in one-on-one matches on AEW TV. It's been a lot of tag team matches, a lot of backstage promos, and you know either Thunder Rosa beats up, you know, jumps Britt Baker, or Britt Baker jumps Thunder Rosa, but they haven't wrestled. They haven't had matches to where you tell the story over a series of matches that gets you to this point. I think that realistically, they gave these women the main event spot, which is very important. And did they deliver in the vacuum? Yes, they delivered. However, the match that they did should not have happened. This should have been, not saying that it needed to be a more traditional match, but you could have been able to do the color. You could have been able to do all the things they did, minus the chairs, the tables, the ladders, the thumbtacks, you know, all that shit. That could have all been done away with and still get the effect of what they got. The thing that bothered me most is not the match in and of itself. It's all the after stuff. Meaning the clips of, you know, particularly everybody praising their performance. Again, I get it, it's sports entertainment, but when you do the backstage videos and all that other stuff, you still have to present it in the context of that this was a fight. Meaning that when particularly when they showed Britt Baker and Britt Baker being attended to by the doctors, she should have been pissed off the entire time. You're still in character. You got into a no holds barred fight with your rival, your arch rival, and you lost. The fact that she's coming out and not being Britt Baker DMD, the television persona, but Britt Baker, the person who at least in that clip was, you know, pseudo looking for affirmation from the Dave Meltzers of the world, wanting to get a 5-star review from Meltzer. That was stupid.
But this wasn't on television.
No, of course not. But what I'm saying is that even I know it's not on television, but the thing is that when they show those clips, people are so concerned about, you know, oh, let's pull back the curtain and see the reality of it. And I'm like, no, continue the story. Continue the story. Thunder Rosa could get all the applause, and when she cut that emotional promo with Tony Schiavone, that's fine. She won the match. She could say that I want women's wrestling to be taken seriously, and I'm like, okay, great. You won the match, and Thunder Rosa has always been the proponent of that, so it makes perfect sense. Britt Baker, on the other hand, is the selfish bitch in this situation, and she lost. So I don't care if you're part of the historic match, you're the loser in this match. In character, as long as that camera is on, whether it's on TV or the internet or wherever, you're still Dr. Britt Baker DMD, the character. And in that context, there should be zero mentions of Dave Meltzer. It should only be about, damn it, I lost this match. Had I just done something different or whatever, and be like, Rosa, I'm going to get you next time.
I don't know.
Britt Baker did it this week when she cut a really good promo on Dynamite. She did a really good job of her promo. But that whole contextual thing about when people do this backstage stuff and then they put it out, on social media and all these other things, what you're doing is that you're immediately pulling the veil on something that could have been perceived. Again, you lose yourself in it. I'm not saying that it's real, but you can perceive it as such if you lose yourself in it. And then they immediately pull the veil on it. It's just like, no, let it be. It was great for what it was. There were things about the match that I hated because I think it's the shits when the guys do it, and I'm never going to applaud it when the women do it, and because it's consistent for both genders. But overall, they did a great job with this match. Do not pull the veil and show it as a performance. Keep the reality of it and keep the story of it going. That's where I think they messed it up.
Well, I don't know. Well, first of all, you say if it doesn't happen on Dynamite, it does not count.
Correct.
These words came out of your mouth many times.
I'm not denying that. I have said it.
All right.
But the thing about it is that this is a continuation of something that happened on Dynamite.
Okay. Another thing, I think it's always, especially with the women, because women, there's some men like a Ric Flair, like a Cody, that are very, very emotional, and they can't hide it.
Sure.
And those are my favorite people in wrestling. The most passionate people, the most emotional, that they can't hide it. Those are the ones I connect with, because that's how I am.
Sure.
So I think the way wrestling is presented now, I don't necessarily have a problem with them going backstage and Britt Baker breaking character to talk about the match, whatever, or how she feels in that moment, because I think that's how you connect with the real person, right? Just like when we saw Mick Foley, what was it, Beyond the Mat? Where is it where you see Mick Foley after he gets beat up by The Rock?
Yeah, Beyond the Mat.
When I saw that, Mick Foley became, that's it. I gained every, since I saw that and that moment with his children, I was like, this might be my favorite person ever.
And you know what? That's totally understandable. But you got to understand that the context of that particular documentary, that was shown well after that event happened.
No,
it would be a difference. It would be as if Mick Foley would have come out in, not being Mankind, but being Mick Foley, and talking about how it affected his wife and children moments after the match happened. And what you're doing is that you've completely destroyed the veil. You've pulled the veil on the story that they're telling on WWE TV with Mankind and The Rock. That's the whole point. Years later, you can tell the reality of the story, because now that story is no longer playing on television. It's years removed, and you can tell the story from a, quote unquote, a more historical context, and that's fine. And if you and the thing is that you could have recorded this, right? Let's just say AEW could have recorded that exact same thing that Britt Baker did and not show it. And let's just say that if in the future Britt Baker turns babyface, and then they can show that particular piece of business from a historical context, and we'll be okay with it. Because at that point now, you can layer that as part of how, what was the beginning of her babyface run, blah, 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 change of heart, whatever. But when you're doing it immediately after the match is over, and you pull the veil on the story, and you're basically telling us what a performance in something like this, that again, the women don't do this typically. And the fact that they were allowed to do it and they did it, it's like, okay, don't pull the veil on it immediately after it's done. That felt like content for content's sake, and I'm like, no.
I don't know. I think that was, in their eyes, maybe not in your eyes, because you don't have as much a love for it as the people involved do. But I'm sure in Tony Khan's eyes, in Cody's eyes, and whoever, Kenny, who is pretty much in charge of the women's division and booking and stuff like that for that division, Um, they're very, very invested, and they probably saw it as a very, very important moment or special moment for them personally, and they probably felt really, really happy and really, really good about it, and they just wanted to put it out there.
Yeah,
It's not the first time I've seen that. I'm 100% okay with it. And when I saw Britt back there and the real Britt, that's it. I'm like probably gonna be a Britt fan. I was not a Britt fan 6 months ago. I am a Britt fan now. To me, Britt is now a made woman. To me now, she's one of the best women in all of wrestling, one of the biggest stars, female talents in all of wrestling. And especially if you see how fast her growth is coming along,
she's
I think the
she's
wrestling world is in trouble. She is she is legitimate now, in my
Britt,
opinion.
Britt Baker is she is very articulate, very attractive, and she's coming along very nicely as a in-ring performer. Now, do I think that she's one of the top women in the world? No. She's fast rising, and again, this goes to the point of where she is in AEW. Knowing that they have a lot of women on their roster doesn't necessarily mean that they're all ready, or that they're all at the same skill levels. Then Britt Baker looks like she looks like a super duper made woman within that environment, but she still has a long way to go.
Britt Baker, if she leaves AEW today and goes, I'm signing with WWE, she will be hot shit showing up. If she was to show up at WrestleMania, it would be a big deal. It would be a huge deal. She is
Maybe.
more over than a lot of people right now because of that match. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but for me,
I listen. I will say this. Do I think you're wrong? Yes, I do. Do I think that, again? I think very highly of Britt Baker. She's very good, but again, inside of AEW, she Britt Baker worked against the best possible opponent in Thunder Rosa. The only other opponent that she could have had in that environment, meaning skill wise, that could have been able, and maybe not that type of match, but the only other woman in AEW that could have given her that kind of a match from a technical perspective would have been Serena Deeb. But Serena's not going to work that hardcore match the way Rosa did. So that Thunder Rosa was the best possible opponent for Britt Baker to have in that environment. And the same thing holds true with Thunder Rosa. Britt Baker was the best opponent for Thunder Rosa to have in that situation.
yeah, that's called good booking. If
I don't know about good booking. I think that it's a
Lou,
good,
I get it. You don't
good
like the
pairing.
match. That match, I have. You're the first person I heard with even one complaint about this match,
No,
and I've been
listen.
looking for it. I've been looking for it.
I
Bully
will
Ray, who's similar to you, who's
Bully
very,
Ray,
very
but
hard on
again,
everything,
and listen, the
and
thing, the,
who
th- the
shocks me
thing.
because he got over doing a lot of BS,
Well,
but he shits on the same BS
but
that
just
he used to do.
understand the context. I'm not going to get into, listen, the whole concept of ECW was something that
Forget ECW.
was unique to its time, but with it ages horribly. It
I,
ages horribly.
I mean, I don't think it ages horribly. I think I can go back now, watch some ECW, and I'll be okay. There's some stuff that I'm gonna be like, I don't know how this worked, but we're forgetting it's out of context. We're watching it, and in our minds, if we go back, those people were over with everyone at that time.
In
When
that,
you're over, it works. That's it. If you're over,
but that,
you can get
yes,
away
but
with
what I'm saying
anything.
is, you may have been over, and again, that's why I'm saying that ECW worked for its time,
Yeah,
but when you watch it back, yes, there are things about ECW that will age very well because they had a lot of good talents, but they also had a lot of bad.
yes,
And
like
that's,
every company.
yes, absolutely. But the thing is that the companies that endure are the ones that have more good than bad. Nobody's perfect. No one.
Yeah, no one's perfect.
No one's perfect.
Absolutely not.
What I'm saying is that in this context, I did see, yeah, Bully Ray had a lot of positive things to say. And again, the match was good. I'm not saying the match was horrible. It wasn't. Both women worked very hard. And you got to include Rebel in this too. She was a part of the act.
Yes, Rebel could have easily messed up the spot she was given, and she executed. She executed.
What
she did her part.
I'm saying is that all the whole concept worked. It worked very well. But at the same time, you'd figure that a match like this, which is really the first real match, I don't want to say it's the first match they've had one-on-one, but it feels like it is. They had this big blow-off match. The following week, Britt Baker cuts a promo on Thunder Rosa, and it's like, okay, it seems like this story is not ending. So if they're going to continue the two of them wrestling after this, where do you go from there?
I think I gotta rewatch the promo because I don't remember. I feel like she said, without saying it, right, but in character, was basically trying to say that, yeah, you won, but I'm the one who got over. I'm the one who's the big star.
And you know what?
Saying
that's totally fine, and I agree with you. Britt Baker got over more strongly than Thunder Rosa in this match.
Well, I'm talking about just character-wise. I'm just trying to say that I think the story for now, the story will never be over. That's just how AEW books. It's the feud can always come back in 5 years or whatever. That's just in my head. Cody versus MJF will happen again when it makes sense. Like, you get it? MJF, for some reason, MJF has a lot of feuds like that. The stories were told in a way that you can always revisit them if you have to.
I think the reason why you feel that way is because a lot of the things that AEW does is that when they begin telling stories, they don't necessarily end them. They always try to keep things in an open-ended loop, which I guess for them works because they feel like they always have a way to revisit things. But a lot of times what ends up happening is that when you don't end a chapter and then start a new one, and you basically leave a chapter either in the beginning or halfway written and then begin the next chapter saying we'll revisit this at another time, I can understand that if they want to book that way to say, hey, we can always have all these different things going on at the same time. If that makes sense for them, that's fine. It's just a matter that sometimes for me, it kind of leaves me like, all right, you started something, you gave me not even a conclusion, but you didn't give like a thread to say, we're pausing this for now. You just basically don't follow up and you start something new. And then if you come back to it later on, it's just like, okay, we're just all going to agree that this is how it's going to, we just all like, okay, that's fine.
I don't understand. I mean, AEW has closed more chapters than they literally have started more stories and finished. I don't want to say finish the story, but close the chapters. Young Bucks, FTR. The blow off was Young Bucks.
They had one match.
Yes, they built to that one match. It was a long build to the match, and that was the blow off. Yes, will they revisit it? I'm sure they will when that time comes. But that was the blow off. It felt like the blow off, right? The
only way that a blow off happens in one match is when, again, it's either a talent is leaving the territory, which obviously nobody did here, or like they did with Jericho and MJF against the Young Bucks, where they did all that stuff for one match. But the reason why it felt like a blow off is because obviously Jericho and MJF were going to split off the way they did the following week. So that's the reason why I'm saying that couldn't possibly be a blow off.
I mean, whatever you want to call it, it's the last match of the story that they were telling. That story was
the only match of the story.
Yes. And sometimes you don't need more. This is what I'm trying to say. Like, why do you need to do month by month by month booking where it's like, okay, we're gonna wrestle each other every night I mean every week on television, then have the match on pay-per-view, then go back and fight each other every week on
Well,
television, then have
no,
the match and have 25 matches. Why are we going to do John Cena, Randy Orton? Who wants to see that? I don't think anybody wants to see that. I think if you have 23-year-olds, I think you tell stories. I think you have you close the chapter, but you don't close it in a way that you can never revisit it, because that is insane. That is insane to close a chapter on a book with MJF, who's 23, to go, okay, the feud with Cody and MJF is done. We had our 3 matches in a row, 1 month to the next, so a 3-month program, 3 matches. We had our blow off, and that's it. We can never revisit it.
the idea would be is that that's a chapter that gets closed. You separate them and you move on. The characters, especially MJF, knowing that how much of a fantastic heel he is, when it comes time to do that, MJF would have grown. He would have gotten different rivalries, and let's just say presumably that he's a title holder. And the idea would be is that Cody would either be a former title holder or chasing after a title, and then the context of that particular story is different than the first time around. You can always use the past in telling the story, because especially if you have two talents, using MJF and Cody as an example, that are both over with the fan base, one being a babyface, the other being a heel. We have that established. We know who's who. And then you can tell, you revisit the story, but with a different twist and in a different angle. But you always use the past to inform the present. It's not a matter of, there's a difference between closing a chapter, separating them, and then when you revisit, it's revisiting through a different angle than beginning a story, pausing it, because they're not closing it, they're just pausing it. They separate the players into different stories and branch them out to other things. And then when they come back and they come back to each other, yes, they have the different angle, but then they'll also leave that other thing that quote unquote was unresolved. So now you're telling two different stories, and sometimes they may not always mix together. If they do mix, it's perfect. But sometimes they may not, because the characters have matured in ways that first thing they did no longer makes sense. And then it's either we forget about it, which is fine, or we find a way to incorporate that into whatever angle they're trying to present to you at that moment.
Look, all I know is that AEW has been doing television for about a year. We've had 1 year of stories. Did all of them? Some of them they're in the midst of some of them. Some of them are, I don't know when they're going to be done. I don't know how long it's going to take. A lot of their stories are 6 months long. That's the style that I like. I'm not saying it's for everyone. I prefer long term. I want everything planned out. If you can tell me what's being planned out a year in advance, good. Maybe that's because when I started watching wrestling, that's how it felt. That's how it was, and you can tell where things were going. You couldn't tell perfectly, right? But you can kind of see, okay, this guy Savage it looks like he's on his way to the title, and that's okay. Or Hogan and Savage look like they're gonna break up, and they'll probably fight each other at a WrestleMania, and if it happens, that's gonna be cool, whatever. And I hope we get to see it, something like that. So to me, that's just the style that I like. Sometimes things happen and you can't finish the story, so you run that risk. But I like the fact that a year ago, I knew Kenny was probably going to be the one to beat Jon Moxley. I didn't know, but I felt like it was a possibility, one of many possibilities. But they kind of showed us there was a direction for Kenny that based on the booking, for me, I saw this coming. Based on Kenny and Moxley seeing each other face to face and instantly having a little bit of a feud, and then putting a little bit of a pause on that, you know, and then Kenny eventually turning heel and beating Moxley.
But
And when
what?
Moxley
But
showed up, I didn't know Moxley was gonna be champ, but and maybe he wasn't even in the plans to be champ, but he kind of, with his mic work and with the fanfare and people getting behind him, it kind of made sense. But now, based on the booking, based on the teases, based on the matchups and what I've seen and the interactions, I'm like, okay, Kenny and Hangman is a thing. Hangman will probably beat Kenny. When? I don't know. How? I don't know. How do they get Hangman to the next level? Who's gonna be? Maybe he has to beat somebody else to get to Kenny. Or maybe they need to have some sort of tournament where
they need to
Hangman
get him away
shines.
from. They need to get Hangman away from the Dark Order.
Hangman will be. If there were a 10,000 fans, they would be yelling cowboy shit all night long, and they would not let any other wrestler do anything. I am very confident in that.
Okay.
But
I
when
mean,
it's time to pull the trigger on Hangman, I think it will be done in a way that makes sense. And then what's going to happen after Hangman, I don't know. But I already know that I feel like MJF is creeping towards that title, and maybe he's next after Hangman. But if MJF ever wins that title, for me, I feel like that's when Cody might come for that ass. And that's when Cody finally, I don't know, they got to find the way, right? Because he has his stipulation, but you can always tell that
there's
story. I'm just saying the fact that I can see into the future with AEW, and right now, if I try to do that with with WWE, I there's I can't even see anybody. The only story I can tell is maybe Edge beats Roman. Who beats Edge? No clue. Roman beats Edge. That's it. Who beats Roman after that?
well, when I say, I mean, listen, I'm not going to argue with you. WWE has a lot of booking problems, and you know, with again with AEW, you kind of know who the stars are, and listen, I know clearly who the stars are in AEW. Whether I agree with it or not, that's a preference thing. That's not me saying, oh, they don't, they suck, or no, it has nothing to do with that. It's just a matter that the way that I view them, based on the way that they're presented, is based on how I base my opinion. I look at somebody like Hangman Adam Page, and I think very highly of him. Do I think that he should be in a team, whatever this thing is with the Dark Order?
It's just a
No,
friendship.
no. Again, no. Uh, it, I've already beaten this. I've beaten that dead horse already with saying that I understand that the way that AEW views it is that if they're top guys, meaning in their estimation, they view Adam Page as a top guy, then the Dark Order can essentially be elevated by being associated with Adam Page.
I don't think that's what they're doing. I think what they're doing is that right now, a guy like John Silver is very endearing to the crowd. There's no crowd, but I have a really, really strong feeling that the bigger the crowd gets eventually, that John Silver will be almost like a little bit of a fan favorite. You don't have
He'll
to
be a,
push
he'll
him.
be, listen, he'll be a cult favorite, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I think the point is for Hangman to befriend a John Silver and almost have his back, and by proxy, getting that love from the fans because he's sticking up for the fan favorite, for another fan favorite. Like Hangman is almost like their hero. Like you get what I'm saying?
I'm trying to.
If you love John Silver, you're gonna love Hangman even more because Hangman's the one that's always having John Silver's back.
Okay, well, you see,
That's just what I think.
the
That's their
the,
plan.
re,
They could be wrong.
the
They could be
reason
very
why
wrong.
the reason why I mean, listen, the reason why I don't view it that way is only because of the fact that, again, John Silver's very endearing. He is. I'm not going to deny that. But with all due respect to him, he and all the guys in the Dark Order, the way they're presented, they're underneath talents.
Yeah, they don't have. Yeah,
Adam
Hangman is the
Page,
main event guy.
correct. So again, this is where I'm saying that there's levels to this.
Yeah, but
And if Adam Page is perceived as a main event talent, and you look at all the guys in the Dark Order, this is not a shade on their skills or their ambitions. They're presented as underneath guys. It is what it is. Then they really shouldn't be associating with one another, because Adam Page, I don't think, again, if the Dark Order wasn't as many guys, and let's just say it's like Silver with maybe 2 or 3 other guys. Let's just say the Dark Order was only 4 or 5 guys, the whole group. And let's just say that John Silver is the most endearing one of the group, where you can say he is the star of the group. Mm-hmm. And then essentially the others, for lack of a better term, either start throwing shade at him, turn on him, blah, blah, blah. Silver has to become an endearing character all on his own, meaning that if you're going to befriend him with Adam Page, the way that they've done it, you got the whole underneath group that were not a very good heel stable, but now they're likable baby faces based on the whole comedy stuff they did on the BTE show, and they brought that to Dynamite, and now we just have to accept them as baby faces. Fine. But they're still underneath guys. If Adam Page is a main event talent, you really shouldn't be associating one with the other, because it's, again, the association is not going to raise the stock of the Dark Order. It's not going to raise their stock, because the way that you raise the Dark Order stock is by putting them in a situation where they can, A, can be vulnerable, B, overcome something, and C, rival with another faction, because AEW has tons of them. So that the association with Adam Page in and of itself does not help, does not raise the Dark Order stock. It only lowers Adam Page's stock. If AEW is going to say, well, we'll do this for now, and then when we're ready to ref Page up, we'll get him serious, and we'll separate this, and Page will be put in a different situation. That's fine. If that's the way they're going to book it, fine. But again, it's going to be a matter of, if I've seen this for however many months they've been doing it, and let's just say they continue it moving forward for for at least the foreseeable future. And by the time AEW decides we want to rev Page up, there may be a harder time for me buying in to Adam Page as much as I want to, because I really like Adam Page. I really do. But it's a matter of like, this separation has to happen, because again, if we're trying to rev Adam Page up, even if it's slowly, to get them to the main event, sorry, can't associate them with underneath guys. Not like that.
I mean, I don't see the problem. I don't see how. I mean, I don't know. Me personally, I don't see how that it negatively affects him. I think he comes off as a charming, endearing character himself, who I want to root for. And I think he wasn't what they expected in the beginning, and they had to make changes. And to me, they made the right changes. And now he's as over. Right before COVID hit, he was as over as anyone on the show. Maybe the most over guy based on crowd reaction. So I think he'll be fine. Anyway, we were too long on that. All right, let's just give some news about Impact, and then we'll get out of here. All right, so UFC 261, which is the that's what's his name?
Is Habib fighting?
No.
Oh, he retired. I don't even know. Sorry, guys. I'm a pro wrestling guy.
It's Usman versus Masvidal 2. Masvidal is a huge star. He might be the second most popular fighter in all of UFC. Believe it or not.
I got to take your word for it, guys. I'm not an MMA aficionado. Sorry.
He's really popular. So UFC 261 actually broke the arena record and completely sold out, 15,000 fans. So, but that show is actually airing on April 24th on a Saturday, which is the same date that uh Rebellion, right? Impact Wrestling
Yeah, I
Rebellion.
think so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
Rebellion. That's gonna be the night that Kenny fights Rich Swann,
And Kenny wins the Impact World title.
and Kenny adds 2 titles to his collection,
The he,
two
he
belts.
puts he puts two more he puts two more stones into his Infinity Ring.
So that'll
Thanos,
be 4 that I know of that he has.
he's the AAA champion too, right?
Yes, so that's 4. He'll have 4. All right. So I don't know how many he's gonna go for. Maybe just the New Japan. I don't know if he'll go for the NWA, even though they are working with them. I don't know if
I don't foresee them put. I don't foresee them being working with Ring of Honor. Quite frankly, there's something there that's a little off.
I'm sure there's a little bit of heat, but if it makes sense, I think they'll do it. I don't know if Ring of Honor will do it. I think AEW will do it, and I'm sure they like a lot of the talent over there. They're probably great friends with a lot of those guys over there. So if there's and they're using when they use people, it's like one person at a time. So if a story makes sense to bring in Jay Lethal, a guy like that, and you got the right opponent, something.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have a feeling that Ring of Honor is kind of doing their own thing, and I don't think
Which is
that
fine too. Which is
they're
fine.
not. I don't foresee Ring of Honor participating in this. I really don't.
Yeah, and they don't have to. They have a direction right now. It seems to be very clear what they want to do, and it's fine. It's working. I think it's a lot better than it was when the whole elite left. They kind of had no direction, but now I see the direction. It's very very clear. It makes sense. They're establishing a bunch of new stars, so I think
Ring of Honor's got good things going for them. They do.
all right. So so Rebellion was supposed to be on the 24th, but because of that massive UFC show, which is probably going to do a huge pay-per-view buy rate, probably over 1 million, they had to move to Sunday. So we're going to get that Rebellion show on Sunday, the night after the UFC, which makes sense.
I have to ask this question. When these wrestling companies, I know AEW had to change their last pay-per-view date based on a boxing fight with Canelo, and now Impact is doing this with their shows. And I know that AEW and Impact, they're trying to run shows on Saturday night, as a means to, try and experiment a different night. But when they book these pay-per-view shows, do they not know?
Well,
Do they not know, like when they go to the pay-per-view providers and they say we'd like this date, doesn't the pay-per-view provider turn around and say no, this date is booked for XYZ, whether it's boxing or UFC or
the
whatever?
pay-per-view provider is going to say, yeah, more money for us. I don't think but also because of COVID, the schedule is not as concrete. The shows are not. It's like 2 years ago, I felt like I knew every WWE show, every UFC show 6 months in advance. I at least knew,
Of course.
where, what time, what date.
Well, when you book the buildings, you have to book the buildings a year in advance.
Yeah, not so right now. Right now, shit is being booked maybe 2 months, maybe 1 month, and then you have Impact taping a taping schedule that's like 6 shows at a time. I'm sure.
And mind you, even this Rebellion show, because all the stuff they've done on pay-per-view is not live; it's all taped. So this Rebellion show is going to be taped too. They're not doing anything live. So it's, I get why Impact would say like, no, we'll move our show to the following night, because
anybody, even WWE, if they are up against UFC, they should move. Nobody.
And the thing about it is that with WWE, I don't disagree with you that WWE should move in those situations, but the reality is that when WWE would book their pay-per-views,
well, they're on Sunday.
First of all, they were always on Sunday.
Yeah, they're not gonna have. But I'm saying if for some reason,
the reality is that WWE is a big enough brand, even though UFC now is the undisputed king of pay-per-view. But it's a matter that there was a time when UFC was probably not as hot. They wouldn't compete with the WWE and vice versa because they know that they cancel each other out.
Yeah.
Today, WWE would catch an ass whipping on pay-per-view against UFC if they were to try to go.
Even if you're the stronger, somebody needs to move. Regardless of how big or small your company is, the reality is, even if you lose 20% of your audience because of this, and
no, that's a lot. That's a lot.
You're gonna lose out on millions of dollars. So
that's huge. That's a huge loss. I mean, listen, all I'm saying is that when I take a look at what, particularly for AEW and Impact Wrestling, what they've been doing is that I think that moving forward, what might happen is with some of these, with them knowing that they've tried to book their shows on Saturday night, is that moving forward, they might end up going to the more traditional Sunday pay-per-view for wrestling because, it's difficult, especially for AEW having to move their show, a pay-per-view show, which they produce live, and having to change it, move it up, a week, later than what they had scheduled. Again, for Impact Wrestling, it doesn't matter because they're taping it. So it doesn't matter if they air it on Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't matter when they air it. But for Impact, for AEW, it's a live show. So there's a lot of moving pieces when you're talking about doing a live show where you may not, in the case of Shaquille O'Neal, wasn't available to do the Sunday pay-per-view. They had to do it on Dynamite. Had the show aired on its original date, that match that aired on Dynamite would have aired on pay-per-view. So these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about that maybe moving forward, all the wrestling companies will probably, start going back to, the more traditional Sunday night pay-per-view to just, steer clear of the UFC and of pro boxing on Saturday night.
I prefer Saturday over a Sunday personally. I think maybe well, it depends, but
I understand why people prefer Saturday night because it's a weekend and shows can run later. You don't have to worry about going to work, getting up early the next morning. I get it.
I mean, I think it just makes it harder on Sundays to link up with people. I don't like watching pay-per-views by myself. I do if I'm by myself. I'm by myself.
Well, I mean, listen. For years, wrestling has been. I know that the WWE did it for years, where they would have pay-per-view shows on different nights of the week. Like for years, SummerSlam always aired on a Monday night. Survivor Series was always either on Thanksgiving Day, which was on Thursday, or Thanksgiving Eve, which is a Wednesday night. Then eventually, what they started doing was that they uniformed everything to Sunday nights because they figured, the numbers indicated that when they did it on Sunday nights, they got a larger audience. More people, especially knowing that if they ran their pay-per-views from 7 to 10 p.m., which is a reasonable time, families would sit down, they'd watch the show together, and they'd get more eyeballs watching the show. Demographics might be different now. People's viewing habits are different now, but for professional wrestling running on pay-per-view, knowing that it doesn't have the same kind of power, again, all due respect to AEW, Impact, and all the other players, once WWE pulled out of pay-per-view, professional wrestling lost a lot of its teeth in the pay-per-view market because nobody else has the brand power that the WWE has. So, when WWE was in the pay-per-view business, all the other companies benefit because of the fact that they can piggyback off of WWE in terms of, being able to fill in dates, and pay-per-view providers look at professional wrestling as a great source of pay-per-view revenue, versus now that's no longer the case. It's UFC by far, boxing afterwards, and maybe pro wrestling, but I don't know where they fall in that. They're definitely number 3 in those 3 categories, but I don't know what else is in between, like what other content is on pay-per-view on any regular basis. But I don't think that pro wrestling is anywhere. It doesn't nearly have the leverage that they once did when the WWE was in the pay-per-view business.
All right. Also, Impact's also moving to Thursdays, which makes sense. So we're gonna have wrestling every day of the week, which I prefer. I did not like Honestly, I haven't been. I almost never watch
Ah,
NXT.
man. It's a lot of wrestling, dude.
I have to kind of watch it when I can, and
That's a
I don't.
lot.
I want to watch it, but you force me to choose. So now I don't have to choose. I can watch. It'll be much easier to keep up with. I can watch every show, almost every show. I mean, I'll probably struggle. I struggle to watch Ring of Honor, but every now and then I could catch up on the weekends or whatever, or at least I can find out what's going on, read about it, and watch pay-per-views
I
or
mean,
big shows.
part of it's really weird because when you have so much wrestling and what we do here necessitates us to watch as much of this content as we can. But again, it's an oversaturation. I mean, AEW has 3 shows on, because they have Dynamite, they have Dark Elevation, so we got 3 wrestling shows coming out of AEW. We have like half a dozen from the WWE. Then we have, Ring of Honor, MLW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, the NWA. If you want to dig further, you can watch AAA. It's like there's so much. It's almost to the point where it's like you have to pick and choose, and this is where again, there's a whole lot of content, but this is where it becomes a matter of, you know, it's hard. It's almost like in order to keep your attention, you got to really make the shows good, and it's hard. It's hard. I mean, I'm not gonna say that it's difficult when you do it on a week to week basis, but man, oh man, there's just so much
What I
content.
say, unless you're doing what we're doing, which is talking about wrestling, which forces us, even if I don't like a show, I gotta watch it because I gotta talk about it the next day.
Would I watch all those shows? The answer is no.
Well,
Would I
yeah,
watch all of them?
and that's fine. These shows are different in philosophy, different in booking styles, different in talent. Pick a show. Pick the one that you like. Don't be, if you don't like Raw, you don't have to watch it. you know, I think there's
Oh, we kind of do.
too much, too much complaining. If you don't like AEW, you don't have to watch it. If you don't like NWA, you don't have to watch it. NWA, I like the way it looks. I like the way it feels, but I hate 90% of the talent, 95. That's just my personal taste.
So that's basically everybody.
Yeah, but if I watch it, I was actually watching the pay-per-view they had recently, Act for the Attack, whatever. I was watching it right now. I was a few matches in. I can definitely watch it, and I can find things that I like. It's not a problem. But they have a unique presentation. They're offering something that no one else is offering, and they're sticking to their guns. And to me, that's a good thing. Don't make the wrestling that I like, then every show is gonna be the same. Make every show different. Ring of Honor feels different than every show. Every show feels different from each other for the most part. They feel unique, and I'm cool with that. If you don't like one, try another one. You'll probably like it a lot better because it's a lot different than the one that you're watching. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the two main national companies are very, very different. I'm not in love with either one for very distinct reasons. Um, the other companies that are more in the fringes give, it's more hit than miss, and I think it's because of the fact that they, in the NWA's case, they're presenting a retro style of wrestling, just with a much tighter budget. I've always really enjoyed Ring of Honor. I've just always been disappointed that they can't seem to get a national TV deal where they can just get something that's more consistent, where you can get real eyeballs on it. Because Ring of Honor has almost always had a very good in-ring product. It's just the way that it looked visually, and the presentation hasn't always matched up to what you get in the ring. And that's always been disappointing because Ring of Honor has survived for 20 years and great talent of a very small but very loyal fan base, but it could have been much larger. It's just that they have not been able to get that distribution deal that will allow more people to see Ring of Honor and get to really sample it in such a way. MLW is kind of the same way. MLW kind of feels like a hybrid of the NWA and Ring of Honor, to where they're trying to do some retro stuff with, people cutting promos, but they have good matches. It's just a matter that, again, you don't get enough eyeballs on it, so those wrestlers don't get exposure. So you get some young wrestlers who may start there, but won't get. They'll be people within the business will view it and they will watch it, but the audience that's looking at it is very small. So when they go to the WWEs or the AEWs or the Impact Wrestlings, they look like they're showing up for the very first time. It's just a matter that MLW doesn't have enough eyeballs on it so that people can recognize them, like, yes, this person is from here. Although, they have, Alexander Hammerstone, they have Jacob Fatu, Selena De La Renta, they have a lot of good talent, in MLW. It's just a matter that you don't get enough eyeballs on it. So just kind of is what it is. But for all of those companies, listen, we got a zillion cable channels out there. Somebody pick them up, put them in a good time slot.
Yeah, that's another thing that bothers me with wrestling. It's like it gets a bad rap, so it's not given opportunities. Wrestling fans are the most loyal fans. They are insane, and they will. Some fans follow everything, and even if it's just, let's call them diehards, even if it's just 300,000 diehard fans that watch every single thing or try to watch everything.
Right.
And if it was easier for them, they would follow. There are plenty of freaking channels that would die for 300,000 viewers. Would die.
Correct. But here's and again, I'm gonna try to oversimplify this, because there's I could really dig deep into this. But the reason why that happens and a lot of people balk on it is because, obviously, when you're talking about professional wrestling, obviously before the advent of AEW, it was WWE and nobody else, right? Everybody else existed and they have the right to exist, but they, whatever. Even AEW in the largest context are still very small. In the context of what you would call the indies, they're the biggest one. They're the ones with the largest national platform, but there's part of it is that they're very young. They're only again, if you look at it from the inception of the idea to now, they're 3 years old, but they've only been on television for 18 months on national cable TV. So it's not fair to compare, but at the same time, when you look at that universe and the independents, they're the biggest one. But for a lot of the reason why television channels, networks, cable networks won't take on pro wrestling, it has nothing to do with the rating or how many people will tune in. Because you're right, wrestling fans will find the shows, and if they know that it's available on their cable station, they're going to look for it. The problem is that no advertisers will buy the shows, and for cable networks to have a deal with a wrestling promotion, and let's say presumably that the network says, we'll help with the production, we'll pay for it, whatever, knowing that advertisers will not buy into the show, the network loses money. So that's the reason why pro wrestling oftentimes doesn't get touched.
Advertisers didn't like to spend a lot of money on wrestling, but it's not what it used to be. I think there's plenty of ad money now.
Maybe, but you got to understand, when you're, obviously WWE is WWE. People they're not buying the show, they're buying the brand.
Yeah, but WWE struggled to get ad money at one point, and
but
slowly but
surely.
surely.
WWE, they've had 40 years under Vince McMahon Jr.
Yes,
of developing those relationships. So there's and that's why the product has changed so much.
But the point is that the perception comes. It's going to come from what's on television. So these people, they don't know nothing about wrestling. It doesn't matter. WWE, they go, does it bring in what we needed to do? Are they accomplishing what we need them to accomplish? And if they think yes, it's good. They're gonna go based on WWE. What is MLW doing? They're doing what WWE does. It's not. I don't expect MLW to. They don't have to get the same exact ads that WWE get. They have to get something,
But
anything.
it depends again. It depends on the comfort level of the network and what they're willing to pay against
Oh,
what
I
they're
get it. I
getting
get it.
back.
But I
If
think
you're not getting a really big return on investment,
if you take a chance, you will come to find, just like I don't know how everyone hasn't figured it out. When you put a wrestler in a Hollywood movie or whatever, they soon turn out to be a really big deal and outshine everyone. Like The Rock and what Cena's starting to do now, starting to become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood
oh yeah.
overnight. Um,
Well, not only I mean that's not overnight now. Let's
well,
not get.
it is in acting in Hollywood. It is overnight.
Well, I mean, well, listen,
Guys,
John
20
Cena,
years.
John Cena's been on WWE again. He's been on national television for 20 years.
Yeah. But like you said, wrestlers don't get the respect in Hollywood that they should. So he's actually has been in the, and I'm not talking about WWE films where he didn't really earn the spot, right? Because he was Vince just
But
go put him
but it
in.
translates. I mean, Cena's charisma translates. The Rock's charisma
That's what I.
translates.
Yes, I
Dave
agree. That's what I.
Batista's translates.
That's what I'm saying. I agree that it translates, but people are not willing to take chances, so it takes longer for a Cena to
Well,
blow up. But if you give him a chance, like they did eventually, now you're finding out he's gonna be in Suicide Squad. Cena's getting his own show on HBO Max, because it does translate. They do end up bringing in a lot
again,
of fans, and they are big stars, and it does pay off. The investment
and
will pay
again,
off.
but the common theme is that all three of those people had the WWE TV. And again, that's watched by tens of millions of people. And especially in the era of The Rock, Batista, and Cena, many more people were watching wrestling on television than they are today. It's not to throw shade. It's not to throw shade on any of the talents that are around today, or saying that they couldn't succeed if presented similar opportunities. It's just a matter that all those guys, Rock, Cena, Dave Batista, they were all major stars on the biggest wrestling television in the world when many more people were watching it. When they were given an opportunity to transition into Hollywood, each opportunity that they have and each success that they garner gives them the next one. It's not based on the fact that, oh, it's because it's a wrestler. Because if that would have been the case when Hulk Hogan transitioned into Hollywood in the late 80s,
Yeah.
and he was the biggest star in pro wrestling, but he sucked as an actor. He
Well, yeah,
sucked.
I'm not saying that
So
if
it's
you're a
just,
wrestler, you're automatically good at acting. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying if you are good at acting and also a wrestler,
oh yeah,
you end up becoming
a bigger
a
star.
much bigger star much faster, because you're already coming with a legion of fans.
You have an audience.
You already have your people backing you that are going to fight for you and watch everything you do and buy everything you sell.
Correct.
And I think yes, like you said, you have to be good too. You can't just be a bad actor like Hogan, and even though you're a big star, yeah, Hogan
Correct.
sucked as an actor. It wasn't gonna work. People weren't gonna keep putting you in movies if you suck as an actor. Even though those movies were pretty popular, even
Yeah,
though
but when you
it's
watch them back,
embarrassing. It's embarrassing if I'm
correct.
an
That's the
executive
point.
and I'm
That's the
putting
point.
in these horrible actors and they're making fun of my movie. So, but if you're good, you give, let's say, The Miz a chance or Ziggler a chance or in a chance. You know, if they turn out Edge is a good actor too. He's on Vikings.
Edge is actually, and the thing about it is for him is that I believe of all those guys you just mentioned, the guy that I can probably see transitioning fully into an acting career and succeeding would be Edge. None of the other guys would. I think only because I think that with Randy Orton, he would be very good at being Randy Orton. The Miz, it's more a matter that if they try it, he could be successful, but you have to be kind of careful in the roles that you give him, because when you see him in the Marine movies, it doesn't he doesn't really fit the role that well.
Those are bad. Those are bad movies.
Correct.
By a bad film company.
Absolutely.
Bad director,
But what I'm saying is that he doesn't fit the role. Even if the movie was good, he doesn't fit the role. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
I don't know if he doesn't fit the role. I think just like when I saw The Rock in his first couple of movies, I was like, I'm just gonna cheer for you because you're The Rock. But eventually, after his 20th movie,
but he committed and got really good.
Same thing with Cena. He did a few movies that were action based, and he found out, maybe I don't like action that much. But when you gave him when he got a few comedy roles, he knocked them way out of the park.
I think part of it is that for guys like Cena and The Rock, when you put them in action movies, that's typecasting. You would easily imagine them doing those roles. But then when you put them in, like the more family friendly comedy movies, then they get to really show their acting chops, and then that's when they can be taken more seriously by the Hollywood community, taken more seriously, and then they can start, particularly in The Rock's case, being able, he's got his own production company, he's able to call a lot of his own shots in many ways, and he gets to really do the things that he wants to do, and produce and act and do all these wonderful things that he's been able to do. And he can always come back to wrestling whenever he wants, on the one-off occasion. And I'm sure that Cena will get to do the same thing in the future. It's just a matter that, Cena's still developing himself in Hollywood, but I'm sure that once he becomes more established, don't be surprised to see John Cena pop up on WWE TV every now and again, work a program, give somebody the rub at WrestleMania, and then he disappears again.
Don't get me started on John Cena.
No, we ain't got enough time for that. But that's a whole other separate topic.
All I'm saying is WWE, please come up with a game plan, come up with dates, talk to Cena, find out when he's available, and let's tell a good, proper goodbye story, please. It doesn't have to be today. It could be.
I mean,
but what? When you have such a special person and such an important person, it is a big deal when he decides to have his last match. That's a huge deal. And he needs to put somebody over on his way out, and that story needs to be told.
I agree. I just think that with a guy like Cena, I don't think that John Cena is he going to wrestle full time ever again? The answer is no. Yeah. Now is he going to stop wrestling altogether? No, he will in some way, shape, or form, until he cannot physically do it anymore. And he's in his early 40s and he's in fantastic shape. If realistically he can come back and wrestle whenever he wants to. And at this point now, do I see John Cena doing a farewell tour type thing? No. But it's kind of like The Rock. Like, we never think of The Rock as retiring from wrestling, although he hasn't wrestled full time in 15 years.
Correct, but his story with Cena,
closer to 20 at this point.
And his story with Cena is that's the end of his career. Even if he comes back and has random bullshit matches, that story was big. It was important. It meant something.
Of course. Right?
And Cena, so far, since he's gone part-time, he's done nothing but BS. And there's no planning. It feels like there's no planning. It feels random. It doesn't feel important. His matches are not given any time. It's almost like go out there and lose to The Undertaker in 5 minutes. Or go out there and have your, this non-match with Bray Wyatt, even though I actually enjoyed it. I know a lot of people didn't enjoy it.
No,
it was 50-50. But I thought I had a lot of fun watching it, but it wasn't a match, and I want to see John Cena, who's running out of time, maybe he has 15 matches left. Who knows? He might wrestle once a year. He might wrestle once every 4 years. Who knows? Who
What is
knows?
he?
But
What is he? Is he in the Olympics now? Once every 4 years?
I don't know. But I know that based on what we've been seeing, we're not getting any Cena matches. But anyway, it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
And that's totally fine. We're not right now. I think that the smart play for Cena is stay away from the WWE because their creative's not good right now. Stay away. He's a smart guy. He'll know when to come back. Right now, not the right time.
All right, we gotta get out of here.
All right, boys and girls, check us out. Instagram, Twitter, at the Wrestlebros. For Vic Blaze, I'm Captain Lou. Deuces.